There's a lot of attention at the moment on GLP-1 agonists, things like Ozempic, and the importance that they have with regards to weight loss. Now, I strongly agree with the science around this. However, I think it's important to put the caution out there because too many people don't understand that with every intervention, there are risks. Now, I'll give you my example. In the sense of hypertension, there are some people who are at risk for high blood pressure and they should monitor their blood pressure. And if they are found to have elevated levels, they need to be on antihypertensives, very important drugs. That is equivalent to GLP-1 agonists. But if your blood pressure is up because you're drinking too much, you don't need to be on a drug to address that. Cut down on the alcohol. That's how you address your hypertension. If after you've done that, it's still up, then fine. We have a similar problem here with regard to these weight loss drugs. People will tend to want to use them instead of addressing the lifestyle issues that are the problem. And they are part of an important strategy with regards to replicating a hormone that is produced by the gut, and it impacts on the way how your body responds to food. This is why it has the benefit with regards to having a critical issue with regards to weight loss. And when you look carefully at the strategy, the brain responds to what is happening. You have the satiety signal. It then signals to the gut, and that then, or the gut signals to the brain, and this makes you less hungry. And so, therefore, you eat less. So, they're taking advantage of this natural system to reduce appetite and therefore make people lose weight. But this is where I am talking about an important caution called the intestinal break. Now, as I said, once you understand the physiology, you will better grasp why these things are so important. And so here is, in effect, an overview as to what GLP-1 drugs will do. And you can see here that they will have an impact with regards to what you eat. GLP-1 is released from the intestines. This is mimicked by the drugs. It then has an impact on your brain. And so this is what it does. When we reflect carefully on that, that then has an impact over here with regards to reducing your appetite so that you eat less, you feel full sooner. It slows the emptying of the stomach. And actually, it slows the emptying of the colon and ileum. This is the intestinal break that I'm talking about. It increases insulin and it can reduce sugar production. So these are all very important things that it is doing. But this is where you have to be cautious. This is where you have to understand what exactly is happening to you. So when I talk about this intestinal break, this is a built-in system that the body has to address this issue of you having too much food reaching the distal part of the intestine. So when you look at it here, you can see when you look at the intestine here, this is at the top here is the stomach. So the stomach empties into the small intestine. That then allows nutrients to be processed. It goes to the large intestines, and then eventually it's passed out. But if too much is coming through the intestines, that can trigger the intestine to slow it down. And so this is the principle of the intestinal break. It's quite natural. So as you eat, the nutrients are detected. These L cells sense the nutrients in the lower intestines. They say, oops, too much is coming through. Guess what? Slow down. It slows it down by releasing GLP-1 into the bloodstream. It gets to the brain, to the stomach, and slows everything down. That's the natural response. This is exactly what you want. So why would there be a problem with this? Well, what I'm trying to explain to you is that if you have not thought about it carefully, if you only focus on these benefits, that's where you can get caught out. So when we look again at these benefits, you then end up with, yes, better blood sugar control because you've slowed it down. You have reduced appetite, lower calories, slower digestion, and you impact on the metabolic effects. All good. The problem is that too many people are only focused on the good. But what about the risks? What happens if this intestinal break kicks in too strongly? And now this is where people have to know themselves and observe their patterns, because this is what would happen. If that intestinal break kicked in too strongly, one, it could impact on the muscle mass, especially if you take in too little protein. You can have some fatigue and low energy. But this is the biggie: the nausea, the bloating, and the constipation. So here's the problem. There are many people who are already having issues with constipation. A lot of people. Their gut is just not working properly. It's relatively lazy. They struggle naturally, in any case, to get their bowels to move. If they have not taken that into consideration, they will find that instead of just getting the benefits, they exacerbate the constipation, which will come with long term risks. And so, this is where people have to think very carefully. It's not that there is a problem with the drugs. These are exceptionally valuable drugs. And I am speaking out about it because I don't want them to do with these drugs what has been done with statins. Everybody is afraid of statins because they know somebody who had side effects. And this is because statins, in my view, had been over promoted and therefore ended up causing negative impact on the public. These are very valuable drugs. I'll talk about them at another time. In the same way, if we allow industry to just promote these drugs and let people think that there are no major issues, just lose the weight. That is your biggest risk. The people are not trying to address their diet. They have never fasted. They're drinking too much alcohol, all the things that will contribute to weight gain. They are not attempting to deal with it in a natural physiological way. There are some people, I remember years ago having a patient who was exceptionally overweight, and I wanted the Ozempic type drug for him. We couldn't get it at the time, but he was an example of a patient where I thought the obesity was such a serious risk that I wouldn't even have been slightly concerned about the side effects. That's the benefit risk equation. But on the other side, if you are doing it purely for cosmetic reasons and you haven't addressed the fundamentals, I think that that's where you're putting yourself potentially at longer term risk. So, as I said, just reflect on these risks here: loss of muscle mass, fatigue, and low energy. This doesn't happen to everyone. But what I would say, the biggie for me, is the people who are already struggling with constipation, who already have these gut issues, who then slow the transit down in the gut. They already have dysbiosis. They have already have a SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. All of these things are going on, and then they slow it down further with a drug that impacts on the physiology that was already struggling. I think that this is the cohort who will become most affected in a negative way by overuse of something that they just didn't understand. So all of this is fitting in with the fact that I am focused on the gut over the next few weeks, and I'll be looking at what is happening. And as I said, this is not a guess. I'm looking at 186 million admission episodes, and this is what the trajectory is looking like. I've got here for ulcerative colitis. It was rising before the pandemic. It flattened a bit, shooting off. The same thing with Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, continued rise. These are issues that are going on in the public. Many people are not aware that they have this, and They don't even realize how the COVID pandemic has impacted the gut, rising inflammation, microbiome changes, damages to the gut lining. All of this is causing problems. And if you add to that a drug that slows transit without addressing these issues, this is where, in my view, you're putting yourself at too much risk. If you want to learn more, look out for the upcoming presentation in just about a week's time, depending on when you watch this, on the 16th of July. Register. There are some free tickets if you get in quickly. People usually take them immediately, and you can join us to learn more about what is happening with the gut and, critically, what you can do to try and minimize that impact. Have a great evening.